you very much for coming to my webinar on maximizing your exit value and doubling the value of your business. I trust that all of you are committed to doing this, and I will talk to you about that as we go through the afternoon. Who are Anthony Pollock and Associates? We are a team led by experienced business professionals with over 90 years of business experience between us. I'm Anthony Pollock. I'm a chartered accountant by background. I've run my own business for 15 years and I sold it. And I have been doing advisory and CFO work with growing businesses ever since. I'm a certified value builder, which is our exit planning system. My colleague, Mark Baxter, is an entrepreneurial business owner and consultant. He's an experienced business growth specialist who ran his own business during the early dot-com boom in the early 2000s. And he's worked with all sizes of businesses, from companies in the low hundreds of thousands turnover to many millions. And he's also developed his own transformation business growth system. So we have lots of experience. What we do is we work with progressive businesses to challenge them to step up and realize their ambitious goals. And I trust that everyone on the webinar today fits that description. We have, I think, because of our experience and our wide experience, we've previously seen the situations that you will find yourselves grappling with, and so we can identify with them. We use tried and tested systems to support the exit planning process, and we work with you to devise a roadmap to your destination. It's not something we do for you, it's something we do with you. And we also have a network of contacts and associates who can solve almost any problem you face, which we cannot solve ourselves. So the question fundamentally, do you want to maximize your exit value? I presume the answer is yes. So the agenda today is, what is your destination? We'll talk about that. What is your timescale? We'll talk a bit about that. Are you business ready? And what does that mean? What are the pitfalls in the sales process? And there are many. And what is our solution? And we'll take you through the value builder process towards the end of the hour we have together. So let's start off with the destination. In Alice in Wonderland, Alice arrives at a crossroads and asks the Cheshire Cat, who you see at every crossroads, but only in Wonderland, not in the real world. And she asks him, can you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? The Cheshire Cat replies, that depends a good deal on where you want to get to. And Alice says, well, I don't really much care where. The Cheshire Cat says, then it doesn't matter which way you go. I think to many people in business, that it's not so much I don't care where, it's I'm so busy doing the day-to-day stuff that I don't have time to think about it. The problem is it does matter which way you go. And if you don't have clarity of where you're going, you may not like where you end up. So question, and I'm going to ask a number of questions. So if you're taking notes, either on your phone or computer or a piece of paper or what have you, do please jot down your answers. And I'll ask you to jot some of them down in the chat, but primarily this is for your benefit. So have you thought what is your destination? Have you written this down? And there's a difference between thinking about it, having a general idea in your head, and having actually started to write it down. There are many people who do the first, much fewer who do the second. Do you use what you have written down in your decision making? Have you embedded it in your company? And if you could put your answers, yes or no, in the chat box, sort of yes, 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 or yes, no, no, yes, or whatever, that would be good. But also do it for yourselves as well, because this is as much benefit for you as it is for me. So the second question I have here is, do you really want to double or maximize the value of your business? Again, yes or no answer. Are you fully committed to this goal? Or is it a hope or a, yes, I would, but I'm not really sure I can? Are you 100% committed? Perhaps more important, do you have a budget for this project? Or is it something that, well, I'd like, but I haven't really allocated the money because I'm not really sure? Are you prepared to invest to achieve the goal of double or maximizing the value of your business? If it's worth it, it's worth investing and getting behind. And again, if you could please put your answers in the chat box. Again, yes or no. So, do you really want to double your business? Are you fully committed? Do you have a budget? Are you prepared to invest? It's usually based on you not having a budget, but that's the situation. So please, again, put in the chat box your answer and certainly write it down for yourself. So timescale. There are the 8 Ds of business. I'm not quite going to call it failure, but business exit. There is deal and decide. And these are the good Ds. Are you ready to do a deal? Do you know what your number is? Is your business in perfect health and condition so that if somebody turned up tomorrow and offered you double or treble the figure that you had just written down on the previous page, could you say yes, thank you very much? And could you complete in 4 to 6 weeks? Because often those are the projects that arrive. I was on the local council and we wanted to buy a particular piece of land. No, it was offered us. A parade of shops was offered to us, and we had to complete by the end of the company's financial year. And we got a very, very good price because they wanted to sell. They wanted to sell by a deadline. And so we got a good value. So are you able to do the deal and to decide to do it and complete it? Then come the not so good Ds. Are you facing distress or disagreement? I had a client I was talking to before Christmas. He was fed up with his business. He wanted to get out. He couldn't wait to get out. Have you got disagreements within the management team? I've sat on management teams where there have been disagreements between the main shareholders or the main directors. One wants to go one direction, one wants to do something else. One thinks particular development is a good idea, the other doesn't. And that in its extremity gets to a point where you can't work together and you have to break up the business and go your separate ways. Disease and disability. Heart attacks, cancer, car accidents are things that we don't expect to happen to us, but they do. I had a CEO I was working with, and I got a phone call one morning to say he'd come off his motorbike on the way to the office. Fortunately, he wasn't disabled, but it raised the question that at any time he could be knocked out and the business would be in a bit of a problem. Disease, there's certainly more cancers around, as our royal family can testify. And who knows what's going to come around the corner. I invested in a business a couple of years ago, and the CEO had a heart attack and could not continue with the business, and the business had to be wound up, and we all lost our money. And finally, divorce and death. We don't expect to get divorced, but divorce statistics are surprisingly high. And if we do, then our spouse is entitled to half the company, regardless of whether they are a shareholder or not. And finally, the Grim Reaper. We may not be around after the Grim Reaper has called, but our families and our heirs and successors and our employees are. And we can leave them in a real mess if we don't plan properly. So moving on, how long have you got? I was talking to some clients about a year ago. They wanted to retire by the time they were 30, and they were about 25. That was their goal. Another client I was speaking to recently wanted to retire when he was 60. He is currently 53, and so he has 7 years. Another client, as I said, wanted to sell in 6 months. It's now 12, but it's a question: how long? And this comes into when do you want to sell? Do you have a view? Is it now? For some people, it might be. Others, it might be a few years ahead. 3 to 5 is often used in discussions, or it may be an age related, as my client in Abu Dhabi, he wanted to retire at 60, or my clients in Dubai, he wanted to retire at 30. So what is your goal? What are your thoughts? Have you considered this? If not, take a bit of time just to think about that now, and think, what is your timescale? In an ideal world, now moving on. Okay, so you've got some idea of when you want to sell the business or exit the business. So how much advice have you taken? How much planning have you done? So the advice is external people talking to you, answering questions, giving you some ideas. Planning piece is internal. What have you and your co-directors done? What about the employees? And then a question of investment. How much of your very valuable time have you invested? Because that has a financial value internally. And perhaps how much external money have you spent? We'll talk further about the Value Builder system later, but there's the valuable system and there are others. Have you done an assessment of the business? Have you got a score of some description that tells you where you are in the process of getting to a good business to sell? And if so, what was it? That will give you a feel of how close or far away you are. Looking further, going back to the 8 Ds, if you're selling under distress or disagreement or disease or everything else, and you want to sell in under 12 months, you may have to take a discount of up to 40% because you're looking for a buyer in extremis. 3 years is usually the minimum successful planning timescale. In John Broiler's book, Built to Sell, he talks about 3 years, usually because there needs to be changes in the business in the short run, which take 12 months to come up to bring to fruition. And then you need at least 2 years of financial accounts, preferably audited financial accounts, under the new business model that enables you to prove to the buyer that you are a good business to acquire. And then probably a year to actually sell the business, unless somebody knocks on the door and wants to buy you. And I will come back to that as an example later. So over 1 year, but under 3, again, you may have to take a discount because you will not have the full benefit of the planning, the exit planning process. And 5 years is a good timescale because it enables you to grow the business either just by ordinary growth or by acquisition. And that enables you to maximize the financial profits, but also to develop the other 8 drivers of value in the business. And finally, how much time are you focusing on building the equity value of your business? Most business owners spend their time in what we call the today space, which is concentrating on sales and revenue. So worrying about marketing, conversions, sales conversions, client retentions, pricing, operational issues. But in order to achieve a maximum value, you need to put time and commit time. And finally, again, I've talked about the Value Builder system. There is a questionnaire, Value Builder questionnaire, which assesses your business over 10 areas and scores you out of 100. There are equivalent systems that I've come across which do similar things. They ask questions, and it's a bit like a sort of vocational guidance test on your company. This provides an independent assessment of your saleability. The Value Builder process provides a structured process for getting ready for exit. and it identifies any areas which need improvement. And the Value Builder system, I think the latest numbers I've seen, has been used by over 75,000 businesses around the world. So it is tried and tested.
An introduction.
Business readiness. If you've taken the Value Builder score or something equivalent, what was your score? The average is about 50. And depending, if you're under 50, then you've got more work to do. If you're over 80, then you are in a good spot to continue to develop business. And if you're over 90, you're almost home and dry. So again, how much time do you spend working on your business to improve its equity value? A day a month? A day a week? Half a day a year? An away day? An away weekend? Just write down either what you do, and if you do something, how much it is, how long it is, and who's there. Is it the whole of your management team? Do you include external shareholders in that? The alignment between stakeholders, which can include external shareholders, the directors, owner directors, and the management team, is very, very valuable. So do you want to achieve a high value for your business? I assume the answer is yes, but I ask the question because of the disconnect that often takes place between what I think I want and what I spend my time actually doing. It comes up this question: are you putting enough time or preparation time into this project? And are you prepared? If you're not, are you prepared to commit the time necessary to create a high value business? And are your ownership team on board? And this is the piece around the wider shareholder group. If you have external shareholders, owner directors or shareholder directors, and perhaps managers in the business as well. I've talked about ownership and then management there. So based on what I've said so far, do you think that you are currently ready to sell your business? If yes, just put it in the chat box. That would be great to know. If no, I'd like that in the chat box if you're happy with that, or at least just answer it for your own benefit. And if yes, are you prepared to review these plans with me to see to check them out? And if no, are you ready to start the planning process? Again, happy for you to put those in the chat box, but please do make notes for yourself. Pitfalls in the sales process. These are scary statistics, and they're probably worse because these are pre-COVID. For businesses that started in 2014, less than half had not gone bust within 5 years. So if you've been in business more than 5 years, then you represent 42.5% of those who started the same year that you did. And that's commendable. However, of the 42.5% who survive those first 5 years, only 90% aren't saleable. And I'll talk further about why, what can be done about it later. And of the remaining 10%, 80% won't sell. And I'll come on to some of the issues around that, which are similar to the reason the 90% won't sell. But one of the ones, and I'll talk about it a bit later, is valuation. And finally, only 5% or 0.45% of what we started with will actually sell and achieve target value. So the question is, do you want to be in that 5%? And if you're in either the 90% or the 80%, are you prepared to take the action necessary to get into the 5%? So going back to the Cheshire Cat, which way ought we to go from here? And how do we solve the challenge of getting a good value at exit? So we start with pitfalls. Valuation. I mentioned it earlier, and the big issue with valuation is that the seller thinks they're worth 25 million and the buyer thinks they're worth 2.5. I was looking at a business for a client in Singapore earlier on, or late last year, and the seller wanted, I think, 11 million, and my client thought it might be worth somewhere between 2 and 3, and we couldn't get to a point of actually having a proper discussion. Sometimes that in those circumstances, the broker actually is not very helpful to their client, in that they allow the client to overvalue them, pay them some money to keep them on the books, but don't actually do anything to help them get into a space where they can sell the business. So that business I was thinking about is probably either in the 90% or the 80%. And it's largely because of valuation. It's also because in that business, it was very dependent on the managing director, who was the second generation. The company had been founded by his father, and his sister was the finance director, but basically the business was run by him. It was very successful, it was profitable, but it was very dependent on him. I think it was also very dependent on 1 or 2 customers, and probably quite dependent on certain managers as well. So there was big issue with dependency as well as with valuation. Cash flow. When somebody buys your business, there are 2 checks they have to write. There is a check to you for the deposit effectively on buying your business, and then there's a check they have to write for the working capital. And if your company is set up in a way that is effectively cash negative, which means you have to do a lot of work before you seek cash flow coming in, then you effectively are creating a situation where some of the money that might come to you is actually going to have to go to the company to fund the working capital requirements. So again, looking at cash flow, looking at looking at pricing, looking at not productivity, but the what am I thinking? It's how long it takes, the process. It's the sales. It's not the sales. It's the delivery process. And finally, profitability. Quite finally, but there's the 4th one. Profitability. If you are not very profitable, or if you have structured your business to minimize your tax liability, which means that you will show yourself not to be terribly profitable, or if you've put in through your business quite a lot of personal expenditure, you will not look very attractive. I had a client who was seeking to undertake some refinance a few years ago, and the real issue was that he wasn't showing profit. I then discovered that he was benefiting from the business significantly, which if he hadn't put those transactions through the personal transactions through the business, he would have been fine. But because he was milking the company for his own benefit, the company looked very unprofitable. And finally, growth potential. A buyer wants to find a company that they can take over and that they can effectively double or treble the value, the profitability of the business, because it makes it reduces the risks around the acquisition. So these are the Value Builder 8 key drivers of value, which the Value Builder process assesses. And then the Value Builder process, as we work with you, we work to maximize your score and your results on these 8 drivers of value. So we start off with financial performance, which we've talked about, sales and profit, and achieving, 10 to 15% net profit percentage. The growth potential we've talked about, the ability of the company to grow 10 or 20 or 30% a year. The Switzerland structure is effectively your dependency on a few customers, suppliers, or key employees. The teeter-totter here is effectively the cash flow seesaw. Are you consuming cash or spitting cash out because you structured your business to get cash in before you spend it? Recurring revenue, which particularly as we see with a lot of the IT businesses, because they run a SaaS model, recurring revenue is to be found there and is very valuable to a buyer. Monopoly control is largely to do with how distinguished are you from your competitors, how much can you set a price that is that has to be paid, and how much are you setting a price following others. Customer satisfaction is something often forgotten about, but it connects with the more your customers are satisfied, the longer they stay, and the longer they stay, the new business is built on the top of your current customers, and reducing the customer churn is vitally important to growing your business, and also it is cheaper. And finally, the hub and spoke piece, which is fundamentally connected to owner dependency. Too many businesses are driven looking backwards, often using historic accounting information without any corresponding forward-looking information. Whereas actually we want to drive our business forward, looking ahead, just as we would if we were driving on the road, and with the benefit perhaps of an equivalent of a sat-nav system where we put in the postcode where we want to get to, and as we drive down the road, if we get sent on a detour for some reason or other, the sat-nav automatically shows us the way to get back on track. And effectively, that's what we do when we work with you and develop a plan and walk with you as you seek to implement that plan. So, is there an optimum strategy? Yes, there is. And it's called the Value Builder System. There are others. This is the one I use, and I have a couple of things that I use around it as well. So here's Stephanie. Now, Stephanie had a business. She was based in Texas. She ran a payroll business. You might think payroll not terribly exciting, and at one level, yes, that's true. However, she was even less exciting. She provided payroll to American families who had to employ a nanny. So there was effectively one pay slip per month, and she did that, and she ran the business for about 25 years. During that time, she had to make a decision. Did she try and sell more things to the parents that she had on her client system, or did she go and find more parents? And one of the key pieces of the Value Builder system is trying to simplify the business so that it becomes easier to productize and easier to run without the owner. And so she just chose to find more parents who had a nanny and needed a nanny. And so she did that, and she ended up with a £9 million business. And she then looked for a company to buy it. She'd spent 25 years building the business, and she found a company that had 70,000 customers in an associated field. And she went to the company and she said, look, if you buy my business and you get 10% of your customers to buy my product, you will have a business of 70,000 customers, and it will multiply the value of the business by 7 times. And so she sold her $9 million business for $54 million. So I think that's a success, but it shows you the benefits of this system. So we go back to the key drivers of company value. Financial performance is largely connected to sales and revenue, but it's underneath that, it is connected to acquiring clients, keeping clients, retaining clients, delivering for clients, keeping clients satisfied, the average value that the client represents, the number of transactions with the client during the year, the gross profit, gross margin in the business, and the overheads. And quite often the overheads in businesses tend to sort of creep up. Things we signed up for don't get cancelled. So by looking through the overheads, by looking at the details of the cost of sales, you can actually look to improve the profitability of the company going forward. I was dealing with a client in Canada, and as part of the work that we did on their system, I asked a lot of questions around, well, what do these people you've got in cost of sales actually do? Are they doing support? Because that was what cost of sales was supposed to be. It was a software business. They were selling software. And I kept, oh, no, this person doesn't do support. Oh, no, this person doesn't do support. And I was asking the question because I expected a software business doing support to have a gross margin of sort of 70 to 80%. And they were coming out at sort of 35, 40. So I was a bit suspicious and discovered that they were doing some marketing or some sales or something. And so we ended up being able to project into the future when we're looking forward at a gross margin of 70 to 80%. And when you're looking forward, that makes a big difference in profitability and cash flow as you grow the turnover. Monopoly control, again, as we talked earlier, is about the differentiating your business. And so looking at if you get over 90% on the Value Builder score, you're getting more than 7 times your EBITDA compared to 3.5 if you're at the average. And you also get more people coming to you wanting to buy the business. So you get more written offers because people have identified you as a business worth acquiring. That means that you get a chance to pick and choose and potentially play one off against another. The other one is the manager versus owner metric. And this is where the manager looks at the turnover and the cost of sales and the net profit. And it can be described as measuring some of the ingredients for making a valuable company, whereas the owner cares more about what the ingredients make. And the key driver around improving and doubling your value is this one. If you have a profit of 800,000 and the average multiple on EBITDA is 3.5, that gives you a business worth 2.8 million. I admit these are dollars, but the principle applies for pounds. If you add 100,000 and you take the same multiple, you get to 3.1 million. However, if you have gone through the Value Builder process and improved all those drivers of value, then you get a multiple of 7.1, which gives you a business valued at 5.68 million. So you can see that you're adding not just under 3 million, 2.5 to 3 million in value to your business by improving the multiple, by working on the 8 key drivers of value. And then if you add 100,000 in profit, similar multiple, you've added 710,000 to the profit. So that is why the 8 drivers of value become so important in doubling the value of your business and in getting the maximum value at exit for yourselves and your co-investors. And you can see that this is based on 55,000 businesses that have used the system. So again, it's tried and tested. So moving on, we're going to look at the hub and spoke. This is, again, owner dependency, which can kill most deals. Absolutely will. If you have an owner-dependent business, then please speak with me and please engage immediately to address this issue, because you will end up being unable to sell the business. So average multiple of EBITDA 3.76. If you know each customer by their first name, presumably means you don't have that many customers, but it also presumes you are heavily involved in the customer sales process. You don't get 3.76, you get 2.92 on average. However, as you become less critical to the sales process, you'll get actually a higher amount. And where if you only know some of the customers by their first name or none of them, you're starting to get a higher EBITDA multiple than the average. And hub and spoke effectively is we also talk about the owner trap. And the owner trap is this: the owner's the primary salesperson. You offer too many products or services which are then customized by the owner, who is the only one who can deliver it. And the customers interface with the owner, and you go round in circles. And this effectively slows the business when the owner's away. Customers, go to the owner when things go wrong, and the revenue will plateau because there's a capacity. The owner becomes the bottleneck. So, how do we improve hub and spoke? Well, one of the things we do is we rationalize what we deliver. And so we move from a situation where effectively the whole company sits on the owner's shoulders to where the employees in the company can take responsibility and the owner sits above the fray. And finally, we deal with the customer score. This is effectively customer retention, customer loyalty. Fred here, when he was at Bain & Company, developed this net promoter score. And the net promoter score works as follows. How many of your customers promote you? How many slag you off? Or actually, this one is how many are passive? How many say nothing? The other one is how many slag you off? And the net promoter score is the promoters less the detractors, and the passives are ignored. So in this instance, you have a net promoter score of 20. And I've seen seen a business that deals with client satisfaction surveys, and they had some quite scary stories around. They were scoring things 1 to 5 across a number of metrics, and even people who were scoring 4 were much more likely to leave because their dissatisfaction was being masked by the score they were giving. So there's quite a bit of other more in-depth analyses of your customer satisfaction, and it's something that I highly recommend that you undertake. And this Dave here talks about the writings on net promoter score and earned growth. So, and then we're moving into growth potential. So how easy is it to accommodate a 5 times increase in demand? So if suddenly there was a run on your product, how would you respond? Is it impossible? In which case, there's an issue around, well, maybe we pay a discount for this company. If it was very difficult, it's strange that if it's very difficult, you can actually get a bit more than if it is impossible. But that's probably because you actually do more than if it was impossible. Fairly easy only scores a little bit, fairly difficult more so, but again, fairly easy, and you can see that you get a significant increase there. So this issue of how if somebody's going to buy you, they will want to know how they can increase demand, because usually in those circumstances, and I came across a friend of mine who'd sold his business. He was in marketing or advertising, and he'd sold out to a conglomerate, and he said it was wonderful. The fact was that I could deal with clients who wouldn't give me the time of day when I was on my own. And so that enabled him to grow the business during the earn-out period. So here's Rod. He sells his £2 million business for 35 million based on growth potential. And finally, recurring revenue. These two chaps had a flower business, and they basically sold flowers, and they started to set up a regular ordering system. So they were selling their flowers to the same people on a regular basis. And what this meant was they weren't just selling a $29 bunch of flowers. They retained the customer and continued to sell flowers to them. And therefore, the lifetime value of each client, each customer, was over $4,500. And so this is the difference between effectively, sorry, I'll go back one. It's that one. So the difference between, what a single item and a repeat recurring business. And people buying your businesses like recurring revenue. And another one is a security business. They're installing it. They're doing 100%. It has a much lower value than a business that was monitoring, which because it had the ability to expand and take on more business because it was much more IT based, whereas the installation would be much more hands-on. So in summary, 8 things every business owner should know. The industry and revenue that you're in, or the industry you're in and the revenue you make are important, but it's not the only things. Focus on selling less stuff to more people, and that includes improving your processes and procedures. Reduce your reliance on a single or few customers. Reduce reliance on a single employee or a single supplier. Get your net promoter score up to 50. And you notice that in the example we went through earlier, the net promoter score was only 20. So many would have work to do on that front. And then leave something left for the people who are buying the business. If you take all the meat off the bone, it might make it actually harder to sell. And create a recurring revenue stream. So how do we work delivering good value in your business? Well, we work on a rotation through looking at your products and services, looking at examining customer input, which was the piece we were talking about a minute ago about retention and customer satisfaction. Looking at new markets, looking at recurring revenue, seeking to differentiate the business. I was talking to a client a few weeks ago, and he originally installed racking into warehouses, and he then moved into doing a bit of design and still installing stuff. But he added the design, the installation, and effectively training, or I think it was in reality mindset changes, and that starts to differentiate him from the bog standard, or we put up racking, or we install stuff in warehouses. We look at dependence on key employees, suppliers, and customers, and we seek to optimize cash flow. And we look, and this is perhaps surprising, we look during this process for your new ideal owner. So we don't leave it to chance. We look around and we seek to identify people who would be good future owners of the business. Ideally, we want to find 2 or 3 who would like the business. And if we get up to over 90% on the Value Builder score, we'll have them queuing up round the corner. And then the detail around that is that we have a series of 12 modules, which we go through on a monthly basis. We look to go through this process at least twice in the assessment and the development of your business. So you can see one of the things you look to do is your scalability and constructing a platform for growth. We also look at automatic customer building. Sorry, I need to go back. But you can see here, we've got scalability, customer score, which we've talked about, growth, automated customers, monopoly control. The hub and spoke is about owner dependence. Switzerland structure is about dependency on customers, suppliers, and employees. Customer score, again, is about getting your net promoter score as high as possible. Teeter totters cash flow. And then we're looking at who might buy, and particularly when to sell. What's the optimum point to sell? So the idea behind the Value Builder is there's a video which you look at and make notes on. We have a module tool which you complete. Then there's a review meeting where we discuss the video and the work you've done. And then we set an action plan following that. And then we go around that in circles every month, and we build the value of the business through building the number of the score in the value builder process. We also have one or two other tools that we can add in as appropriate, particularly around the CFO role and some more details around the personnel and operations. What does it all cost? Well, I do a review meeting with prospects around where they're at and where they want to be. I charge $7.50 for that. We do a detailed discovery and planning system where we go through the 3 value builder questionnaires. There's a financial 360 questionnaire and a company 360 questionnaire. So there's a lot of work that we do around getting underneath the details of your business and your people and your systems and processes, so that we can help you with getting a proper plan together. Step 3 is the monthly review meeting, which I've talked about previously. And then I think there's also an annual planning session, which we add into the process. And that, to some extent, is a review of what we've done during the year. And we may find that you've missed 1 or 2 things because things have got busy in the business, so we might be a bit behind. And that might mean that we've got other things. Things will take longer, or maybe there's something that we've been doing, but we haven't quite finished implementing it properly. So we might have to go back over that again. So just to recap what we've covered, do you know your destination? Do you know your timescale? Are you ready, and can you avoid the sales pitfall? Have you decided to invest time getting ready to sell? And have you decided to invest money in maximizing your exit value? Would you like to take the Value Builder questionnaire? Would you like to commit to working through the Value Builder process to maximize your exit value? Would you like to engage with professional help? Are you prepared to schedule time in your diary to maximize your equity value and agree a budget